You ever hear a sentence so sharp it splits your day in half? That's exactly what happened the morning the receptionist at Burst Academy looked up and said, real casual, "Your daughter is whispering to the janitor." I swear, I felt my whole body freeze mid-step because my daughter, Ivy, hadn't said a word to anyone in almost a year. Not to me, not to her therapists, not to any teacher, but the janitor? That just sounded like someone's bad joke, right? So, I turned around, heels clicking on that expensive tile, and asked, probably sharper than I meant, "What did you just say?" The receptionist blinked, said something about Ivy talking to Mr. Blake, the janitor. I could already feel that old legal adrenaline pumping. The part of me that always expects a fight or a lie. I moved through the hallways of Burst like I owned them, even though I knew, deep down, this place was built for people who never had to learn how to fight for anything. But that day, none of it mattered except finding Ivy. I stood outside her classroom, watched through the glass. There she was, legs crossed, blue dress, all quiet as usual, except she was leaning toward a tall man in gray overalls, Mr. Blake. The door was cracked open just enough that I caught Ivy's voice. Soft, but real, "See you tomorrow." And that man, he didn't act surprised, didn't act like he'd discovered some miracle, just nodded and said, "I'll be right here." I froze, honestly. That whisper was worth $1 million to me. I pushed open the door, told Ivy to grab her things. She startled, rushed to my side. "Mr. Blake." He stood, nodded, said, "You must be her mother." I stared him down. "And you're the janitor who thinks he's a speech therapist." He didn't get rattled, just said, "I was just listening, ma'am." I pulled Ivy away without another word. But my mind was spinning. How did this man, this stranger, get my daughter to speak when every professional had failed? That night, while Ivy slept, I did what any control freak mom would do. I dug. Found out Gabe Blake was once a celebrated speech pathologist, specialized in childhood trauma, published, awarded, but disappeared from the field 4 years ago. Now he was a janitor. No scandals. No lawsuits, just vanished. I barely slept. Next day, I showed up at school again, tracked him down fixing a fountain outside. I hit him straight. "Why are you mopping floors at a prep school?" He said, "I like quiet places." We went back and forth, but he never once tried to impress me. He just listened, answered only what mattered. Finally, he said something that stuck with me. Sometimes kids stop talking not because they're broken, but because no one's listening. Let me back up a sec, because in the middle of our standoff, something shifted. I realized this wasn't about credentials or titles. It was about the silence between people and what it means to sit with someone in it, not to fix them, but just to stay. I told him Ivy stopped talking after her father left, after I'd broken down in front of her. I admitted I didn't know how to fix it. Gabe looked at me and said, "What if she's just waiting for you to hear her?" Yeah, that happened. I left angry, but the truth of it followed me home. The days that followed felt different. I started watching Ivy more closely. Not as a problem to solve, but as a person trying to find her way out. One evening, I sat on her bed and, instead of asking questions, just said, "Do you like stories?" She looked up, surprised. For the first time in months, she reached for my hand. Meanwhile, I kept running into Gabe at school. Sometimes I'd catch Ivy glancing his way. Sometimes they'd share a quiet moment at the piano. Just music and breathing. One day, I saw her hand on the keys, searching for a melody. Gabe was there, just listening. No pressure, no expectations. It dawned on me. He wasn't trying to make her speak. He was waiting for her to choose it. But life doesn't let you have peace for long. Word got around. Parents, the board, started questioning unorthodox behavior. Concerned about the janitor spending time with students. I sat in a conference room full of people who'd never met my daughter and told them what it's like to watch your child disappear behind silence. The irony, of course, was that while they debated image and risk, Ivy was finally finding her voice. And then came the twist, the kind you don't see coming, the kind that makes or breaks everything. There was an incident in the common area. Kids crowding, a girl crying. Ivy standing her ground, voice ringing out. I said stop. She told the truth, clear and loud, refused to be minimized. I was there to witness it, and honestly, I think half the adults in the room learned something that day about what courage really looks like. That night, Ivy said to me, "Sometimes silence is just waiting for someone to sit with you in it." And I realized, finally, that healing isn't about filling the quiet with noise. It's about holding space for what's hard. The rest wasn't magic, it was work. Slowly, Ivy opened up. She played music, wrote stories, let me in. Gabe, for his part, just kept showing up, never asking for more than what Ivy or I could give. One rainy afternoon, I asked him if he'd ever go back to therapy. He said he didn't need the license to help, just needed someone to stay. I invited him to dinner. No agenda, no fixing, just being together. It was awkward and perfect, the way first steps always are. In time, the school recognized what was happening, not just with Ivy but with other kids, too. They asked Gabe to lead a small group, unofficial but real. Ivy became his assistant, helping other kids learn to find their voices. Watching her, I finally understood she didn't need a hero. She needed a home, a place where her words, or her silence, were enough. The story doesn't end with a big speech, but with Ivy on stage at the end-of-year ceremony, hands trembling, voice sure. I used to be quiet, not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I didn't know if anyone wanted to hear it. Then someone did. The applause that followed wasn't thunderous. It was gentle, reverent. She ran off stage into our arms. The three of us finally a chord, not a solo. So, yeah, sometimes it's the janitor who teaches you the real meaning of listening. And sometimes it's your own kid who reminds you what courage sounds like. I'm not saying we're fixed, or that the past is gone. But for the first time in a long time, the silence between us isn't something to fear, it's where love grows. Now, I want to hear from you. What part of this story stuck with you? Have you ever felt invisible? Or found someone who listened when you couldn't speak? Drop your thoughts below. Let's keep this conversation real. And if you know someone who needs a little hope, share this story. Because sometimes, the best stories are the ones we learn to listen to together, you know? After that night, the one where Ivy stood on stage and let her voice echo out for everyone to hear, things didn't just tie themselves up in a neat little bow. No matter how much I might have wanted them to. The world didn't magically rearrange itself because one small girl remembered she could be brave. In fact, it got more complicated. In all the best and hardest ways. Because the truth is, when you finally find your voice after a long silence, the next step is learning how to keep using it, especially on days when the world would rather you stay quiet. The week after the ceremony, Burst Academy was humming with the kind of gossip only private schools can generate. Parents whispering, teachers side-eyeing, some kids now looking at Ivy like she was made of glass. Others like she was some sort of tiny superhero. I tried not to read into it, but I saw how Ivy's shoulders sometimes tensed in the hallway. How she'd reach for my hand a little tighter on the walk to school. Old habits, they don't disappear just because the sun came out for one afternoon. You know what I mean? One afternoon, I showed up early for pickup, rain again, soft and steady, and I caught Gabe sitting in the corner of the music room with Ivy and three other kids. He was showing them how to play a simple melody. Each kid taking a turn, some too shy to touch the keys, others pressing down like their fingers needed to make something real. Ivy was quiet at first, but then she nudged the boy next to her, said, "You got this." And for a moment, I saw all the threads winding together. The hurt, the hope, the tiny sparks of courage being passed from one child to another, no words needed. After the session, I asked Gabe if he ever worried the world would come knocking again. Remind him he wasn't supposed to be more than just the janitor. He shrugged, smiled that tired, honest smile of his, and said, "I guess I'll keep listening until someone tells me I can't. But honestly, I'd rather get fired for caring too much than for not caring at all." I wanted to tell him that sometimes the bravest people are the ones who risk being misunderstood, but I just nodded, because some truths sound better when they don't get said out loud. Twist is, the next morning, the principal called me in. Said there'd been a meeting, parent complaints, whispers about boundaries, about letting a former therapist work unofficially with students. I expected the old shame and anger to flare up, but instead I felt calm. "You're worried about liability?" I asked. He nodded. "And about precedent," he added, not looking me in the eye. So I told him, every precedent started with someone being brave enough to do what's right instead of what's safe. If you're scared of headlines, maybe look at what these kids are finally able to say, and ask yourself which story matters more. He didn't answer right away, but I saw the doubt in his eyes. Sometimes, when people hear the truth, it doesn't change them, but sometimes it sticks like a seed. That night, Ivy crawled into my bed, holding her music box, the one Gabe had given her from his late wife's collection. "Can I play it?" she whispered. I nodded, and as the tune filled the room, she whispered, "Do you think I'll ever forget how to talk again?" That hit me hard, because I'd wondered the same about myself, about love, about honesty, about standing up for what matters. I pulled her close and said, "If you do, I'll be right here, waiting for the next time you want to be heard." Days turned into weeks. Spring started sneaking back into the city, softening everything, even me. Gabe's little music group became official, just a pilot, no headlines, but kids signed up. And even a few teachers stopped by to listen. Ivy didn't just attend, she helped. Some afternoons, I'd catch her scribbling little notes for the shyest kids. "It's okay to go slow. Your voice is enough. I'm glad you're here." I'd find them crumpled in the trash sometimes, but mostly I'd see them being folded and kept in pockets, carried home like treasure. One evening, while Ivy practiced at the piano, Gabe sat on the window ledge and told me, out of nowhere, "You know, I used to think my life was over the day I lost my wife. Like, that was the end of everything I'd been trained for. But I was wrong. The real ending would have been never letting myself matter to anyone again." I didn't say anything for a long time. Sometimes, the deepest conversations are just two people letting the silence hang until the pain feels less sharp. Then came the night Ivy had a nightmare. Woke up sobbing about the day her father left. About being too scared to say anything. She asked, "Is it my fault you were sad?" I held her and told her what every parent should say, but sometimes forgets. "No, never. If anything, you saved me from losing myself completely." For the first time, she believed me. I could feel it in the way her breathing slowed, her hand resting on my heart. Not long after, I found a little envelope on my pillow. Inside, a note in Ivy's shaky print. "Mom, I'm not afraid of being quiet anymore. Because you hear me anyway." I cried, not loud, just tears running quiet. The kind that wash away old shame. You know what's wild? The school board never made a decision about Gabe. They just let things be. Maybe that's how most real change happens. Slow, then all at once. Like a river finally breaking the dam. Gabe got offered a contract to start a small, trauma-informed music therapy program, but he laughed and said, "I'll do it if you call it something else. No therapy, just listening club." That's how it stuck. Last week, Ivy got invited to speak at a parent night, not with a speech, just to play piano for the new families. She sat up there, feet dangling, played her favorite song, and when she finished, she looked right at me in the crowd and said, "It's okay to be quiet, but it's even better to be heard." Parents clapped, some cried, and I think in that moment, more than any courtroom win, I felt what it was like to really come home. We're not a perfect family, never will be, but there's a new kind of peace in our house now, the kind you only get when everyone's voice is allowed to change, allowed to grow. Sometimes, late at night, Ivy will come sit beside me while I grade papers or read case files. She'll lean her head on my shoulder and whisper, "Tell me a story." And for the first time, I know the story she wants is just the truth, the messy, ongoing, unfinished kind. So what about you? Maybe you're listening and wondering if your silence means you're broken, or if you'll ever find someone to hear you. Or maybe you're the one who needs to sit in the quiet and let someone else find their words. Either way, I hope you remember. Every story worth telling begins with someone choosing to listen, even if it's just for a moment. And if you want, you can share your story below. Or tell someone close to you tonight. Because sometimes the most important thing isn't what you say, but the courage it takes to keep saying it, over and over, until the world finally hears you. And maybe, just maybe, that's where the next chapter begins.